Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to everyone online and those of you in person. Looking forward to having a conversation about LinkedIn and networking. My name is Liz Romig. I am Director of Career Education and Outreach in AU's Career Center. This is designed to be interactive, so please ask questions. And those of you online, please type in the chat as you have questions. I'm very happy to be interrupted. The point of this is to make it useful for you. So Emily, do you mind starting the?
Absolutely.
Yes. Oh, you're not. Now you're good. Perfect. So this may look familiar because it's the advertisement for our event, and I thought I would just review what we're hoping to talk about today. So all of you, I think, are familiar with LinkedIn and have probably used it. We consider it an important networking and career and professional development tool. But it can be confusing to navigate, even for people like us who work in career centers. And it can get overwhelming and seem like something you have to dedicate a ton of time and energy to. And have concerns about, are you posting too much, not enough? Who should you connect with? Is it okay to message people, and how do you message them? So what we wanted to do today was to talk through some tips for how to successfully utilize and leverage LinkedIn, particularly for networking. But I will sneak in some other ways to use LinkedIn that I just think are interesting and maybe useful. So before I get started, I wanted to get a sense of if there were particular things that brought you here today that you want to make sure that I cover. Any questions about LinkedIn or concerns you have or comments on how you've used it that you want to mention? Yeah. Awesome.
So I wanted to know, does the number of connections actually matter?
Yes.
And do people look at that before they answer you?
Yes. So to repeat the question, does the number of connections you have on LinkedIn actually matter? And do people pay attention to that when deciding whether or not to respond to you? LinkedIn does utilize algorithms that change depending upon the number of people you're connected with. And 500 is sort of the sweet spot for when you start getting seen more frequently in searches. It doesn't mean people won't respond to you if you have under 500 connections, but it will take a while. It'll take a while to get to that number of connections, of course, but that's just something to be aware of, that you start showing up more frequently when you hit that. And we can talk about how you would go around getting to that number. You'll see when we look at a couple of sample profiles that once you hit 500, they stop counting. They just say over 500. I do think people are less inclined to respond to you for other reasons. And that tends to be things like if you don't have a photo in your profile. And we'll talk about how to get those and which ones might be most useful. Yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't created a link because I don't have a headshot. So like how professional do the profiles should be?
Great question. They do not need to be professional headshots. However, we are offering headshots in the Career Center for free.
Oh, what?
Yes, done by one of our PAs, and there's information on it in the slideshow. And I encourage you to follow our PAs on Instagram because they advertise this too. But they're Mondays from 2:30 to 4, and you don't need an appointment. And they're really beautiful. So she's a talented photographer. You can also ask a friend to take a photo. These don't need, again, they don't need to be professional quality. I think just something a couple notches up from a selfie. Good angles, good lighting. Something you feel confident in. Yeah. We were just getting started. My name is Liz. Welcome. Thanks for coming. And I wondered, I have a prepared presentation. If you have questions that brought you here today that you want to make sure I answer, feel free to let me know now, or feel free to stop me as I go. But I want it to be interactive.
And Liz, we have some online comments. So just really more information about growing your network and how you can do that. And finding people who are maybe related. Because if you have a lot of connections, but they're not related to each other, how can you find them?
This is something I do even myself, because I'm always trying to grow my own network, partly because it's interesting to see what other people post. So often I focus just on AU people. And when I go in my into my LinkedIn account, you may have seen that they propose people you may know. And often it's for you, it might be other students at AU. For me, it's other staff at AU. If I do know them, I connect with them. If I have something to say, I will say, like, oh, well, we worked on this committee together. Great to see you here online. Or I'll mention an event where I met them. But it's more likely people will connect with you if you send them a message, but these don't need to be long messages. In fact, brief is often better. Yeah.
So like we're here through like the Washington semester program.
Oh, great.
So if we just like meet people, like do you think it'd be okay to just connect with them?
Absolutely.
Like, here,
Yes.
If we're not gonna like stay here or be here.
No, because you might want to come back
Mhm.
here, right? And in those instances, I always, for myself, you think you'll remember people and their names and how you met them, and it's hard. So I always, like, the night after a networking event, or last week we had our big job fair, there are employers I chatted with and really liked, and that night I just went home, wrote messages. Recruiters are in the habit of using LinkedIn. They want to be on it. People in DC are very into LinkedIn. So I think you'll find it easy to make these connections. And then when you go back home, you can maintain those, and hopefully they'll give you a reason to come back here and keep those connections alive. Yeah. Glad you all are here. Yeah. Anything else online, Ellie? Okay, great. So there are a few things that I like to be practical in my presentation. So I don't want to just talk about it. I want you to come up with some things you know you want to do on your LinkedIn profile. So we'll talk through what I think are the key parts of LinkedIn. Some parts of it I think are more useful than others. And I want you to come up with specific things you think you want to do. And if you want to talk through how to do that or language you might want to use, we can do that together. I want you to start making a list of people or groups to add to your network. So we just talked about one, just people at AU. It's an easy place to start. So that you feel like you can make the first steps towards doing so. And then identifying other sources for networking that build upon LinkedIn. The point of today is to talk about LinkedIn, but it's not the only way to meet people. And sometimes you can reach out to people on LinkedIn and they either might not use it frequently or they just might not respond. And I don't want you to think of that as a dead end or to have that be discouraging. So we can talk about other ways to find people's emails addresses or to interact with them in person. And then my last goal, of course, is that you get the questions answered that brought you here. So again, please feel free to interrupt me as we go. So just a few overview things. Why is LinkedIn useful? For those of you who are already using it, are there ways in which you have found it useful already? Yeah.
I think it's useful just to see somebody's professional background and see like what they've done, their skills. I mean, just see their accomplishments in
Definitely.
a quicker way than just reading the over and over.
Yes.
Can you repeat that?
Yes, sorry, Emily. So the comment was, it can be interesting to see people's paths. So perhaps where they went to school, what previous jobs they've had. So often you meet people and they tell you the title they have today, but you don't have context for how they got there. Yes. Yeah.
For me, I like when it tells me like when you pick like what you're looking for, and it tells you like, oh, this job might fit, this job might fit, and it gives you like different ideas for stuff in a field that you may have not known existed.
Yes, I love this example. So the comment was proposing ideas for fields that you may not be aware of based on your interests and your searches. Welcome, come on in. This is great. So I did my master's in SIS. I don't know if any of you are studying in SIS. And when I started in the program, almost everyone in my cohort was interested in working for the State Department. And this made sense. Like, State Department's huge. They do recognizable work related to international relations. But the longer we went on through the program, the more we would talk about the fact that there are many other organizations that do similar work and good work. We just weren't aware of them. So talking to people, of course, is a great way to get that information, going to job fairs, networking events. But this is a great tool for starting to see, what do people who've worked at the State Department, what else have they done, and where else might you consider looking that does similar work? And you also had a comment too. Yeah.
I was just gonna mention that it also gives recruiters like a better like image of you
Yes.
than what a resume cannot actually portray.
Yes, in a lot of great ways. So every recruiter, so the comment was that it gives recruiters more information about you beyond your resume. Resumes are great, but they're really static. You can't include, and we are always saying resumes should be limited to 1 page. We're really maniacal about this. But that forces you to cut off things that could be really useful for a recruiter or hiring manager to see. They also don't tend to use things like links to your portfolio. If you're a journalism student, you have articles you want people to read, it's harder to get to things like that with print materials. And people don't always click on them if you send them electronically. Whereas in LinkedIn, there are options for photos. They can see posts that show your writing. So you kind of have built-in writing samples, built-in evidence of your work, not just you talking about it, but you demonstrating it. So yes. So how do recruiters use it? It's you all already know that recruiters are using it. They're using it really actively. And often they will reach out to students. So in the career class that I teach, students say they have gotten unsolicited messages from recruiters. Sometimes they're things you're not interested in. Sometimes it might be something that you want to engage in. I will always a plug on that. When in doubt, if it sounds too good to be true, you're always welcome to ask us. There are people who we always warn students about employment scams. So when in doubt, please feel free to ask your career advisor. But it is a tool that is used legitimately by recruiters to reach out to you. So we've already talked a tiny bit about how it's different from your resume, but some other things I didn't mention that I really like about it is it allows you to include things like groups that you're interested in, organizations. You can follow influential people in your field. And this allows you to see what other organizations are doing. I follow other career centers in the area to see, is there something they're doing that we should be doing? Are there skills that people in similar lines of work to me have that maybe I should consider gaining? So it allows you to sort of benchmark your own work and just get ideas for interesting things that you might want to do. It's much more conversational. People post on it like they would at another social media site, and can interact in a I would say more professional way. Usually it's rare that you see something questionable on LinkedIn. And again, it's a place to not just tell people things, but really to show them. So I wanted to just flag the fact that we have on our website a number of other resources and guidance related to LinkedIn that you can feel free to go to after today. So we have a whole section on our website about building your brand, and LinkedIn is just one of the platforms that we reference on here. No, that's okay. Yeah. And we update these pages regularly to give you a sense of kind of what's the norm with these tools. As new tools come around, we'll add them or delete things. So I don't get the sense that LinkedIn is going anywhere. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to do is to give you some examples. And sometimes we've given examples of kind of made up people, but I thought what better than to show you some AU alums who have done really interesting work. The first one is actually a student who just graduated who worked in the Career Center. So had a lot of behind the scenes advice. Oh no.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a little bit about her while we're getting that going. Her name is Ashraya, and she worked in our office as a digital storyteller. So her background was in work that
use this one.
Yeah. In work that really connects to LinkedIn in the art of using words to translate work, using imagery, and you can see this in her profile. And when we were getting going, there was a question about, are people less inclined to connect with you if you don't have a lot of connections? And I think that's less of an issue than how your page looks. So if you have a picture that's recognizable, people worry when there's not a picture that you're not real. And I know sometimes you may not want to share pictures. Sharing something that you feel comfortable about is the way to go. But not only can you share a profile picture, there's also the option to do a header in the back. And I'll give you some examples. You can see right away, you get information about Ashreya from her headshot, but you also get information about the kind of work she wants to do and what she's interested in from that banner image in the back. So one of the first things I did when I'm teaching a class that's mostly seniors right now, and they had an assignment related to LinkedIn. When I looked at their LinkedIn profiles when the class started, almost all of them for their headline, which is what's right below your name, it just said student at American University, right? What might be limiting about that as your headline? Yeah. What else do you not know about them? No, really nothing. You don't know what they want to do with it. You don't know what they're interested in. So one thing I love about our students, and is similar to my own background, is I had a lot of interdisciplinary interests. So I had one major, but a very different minor. And a lot of my career goals and interests were kind of in the third category. So this is the headline defaults to your most recent job title if you have work experience. So mine would just say Director of Career Education and Outreach, which is fine. That is my job right now. But again, doesn't necessarily share information about what I do or what my interests are or skill set. So she has just updated hers to say recent Master of Public Policy graduate. And the other example I'll show you is even more detailed than this. But I would say starting with being one notch more specific than just student at American University is a place to start. I mentioned for those, if you didn't hear, we do offer free headshots in the Career Center on Mondays. So that's from 2:30 to 4. You don't need an appointment. And if you have questions, you can email our office about that, but that's something we do provide. So a couple other things as you think about your headline is thinking about who are you trying to attract? Are there types of organizations you're most interested in? What are your skills and interest areas, and how can you make it targeted and specific? Do any of you already have headlines that you feel good about or that share? Yeah, what is it?
And then we need to know, so, mine is, political science major at Trinity College.
Great. So political science major at Trinity College. That's already better than student at Trinity, right? Yeah. So we get a sense of your major. Adding something like interested in, and you could indicate a field or a type of work or research.
Let's say I'm interested in law, like then
You could even say interested in law. Yeah.
For headline, is that the part that's under your name?
Exactly. So for Ashreya, it's recent Master of Public Policy graduate.
So can I tell you mine?
Yes.
So I just have, because I've been like looking at other people's LinkedIn and like tweaking
That's
it like
great.
based off of like what I see on theirs that I like. So I just put like student athlete at Illinois Wesleyan University, intern at US7.
Love that.
Okay.
You could even say what sport you play if you want to, if that's not the most important part to you, but the fact that you're a student athlete is. So this is up to you. If you're thinking about, and it might be more relevant to talk about where you're interning or what your interests are, since it's job oriented. But I think that's great. It shows you're balancing a lot. It shows what your interests are. That's great. Yeah. Anyone else want to have questions about theirs or want to tweak? Yeah.
How much is like too much and then how much is too little?
Yes. Good question. The other one is longer, and I'll show you that in a minute, and you can see how that kind of lands. The other thing is you don't have to write them in complete sentences. So I would be creative with the format of LinkedIn. While with resumes, we often have like very strict templates that most people follow. With this, I think you can be more creative and clever. Some people just have like short things like educator, artist, boom, so you get a taste of what their interests are. And something I say a lot to students is with any of these materials, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your goal is not necessarily to tell everyone everything. Your goal is to get people interested enough in you that they want to talk to you. So how do you entice people into wanting to be in conversation with you? And often that's not telling them everything. When people see like a huge, long profile, resume, cover letter, their eyes sort of start to glaze over. And it's hard though, when it's your life and you want to share everything you've done, but being really ruthless about keeping things short and sweet will help you. Okay. Do you mind scrolling down a little bit?
I'm sure.
So I wanted to show you a couple things on Ashraya's page. So first, I mentioned that there are things you can do on here you can't do on a resume. One is this featured page. So this shows some posts that Ashraya has made. These are opportunities to be strategic about your accomplishments. So she made a post when she finished her master's. She made a post when she had a piece of her writing published. So this is a way to share these accomplishments and give people an opportunity to link to learn more about them. And the images look really nice too. And if you can scroll down a little bit more, the about section is another opportunity. I think of this as kind of like your elevator pitch in written form. So, and I'll read hers out loud. Current associate at Third Bridge, servicing consulting firms globally. I can be reached at her email. And then a consultant skilled in strategic communications, project coordination, and policy analysis. An MPP graduate from American University, specializing in international development, sustainable development, and women's and children's rights. Aspires to find local and global solutions to human rights issues, poverty alleviation, and climate change. Passionate about connecting people and communities to the resources they need. What I love about this is we often tell students in this about section or elevator pitch section, your goal is to tell them something about your past, present, and future. So, which she's done very cleverly. She's told us about her degree that she finished, where she is now, and what she aspires to do. So it's showing people what skills she has, what she's already accomplished, but it gives you a real sense of what she's passionate about. And this is hard to pull off on a resume. So this is nice that you have this space to do here. I kind of wish it appeared higher up on the profiles, but it is where it is. So that my main piece of advice with this section is think about that past, present, future. Yeah.
Is there a way to like upload your resume into LinkedIn and then it automatically like
Yes.
does all your experiences?
Yes. And then I would tweak it from there
Okay.
because there will be things you probably want to
Take out.
shorten or take out or add. Yeah. Okay. And then what I like about the resume sections is they allow you to include things like skills. So that isn't typically the norm on a resume. You include skills in your bullets, but I like how she can very directly say, I had this specific job, I did X, and here are the direct skills that I got from that experience. And then it looks nice visually with the logos from the organizations, which they automatically upload from the organization. So those are a few things I wanted to highlight on hers. And then if you don't mind going to.
I do, and we do have a
Yeah.
question
Oh,
in the
yeah,
Q&A that you're kind of covering the different parts of
Yeah.
the profile, but what are the first essential steps for beginners in LinkedIn?
Yes.
Should we start following job opportunities right away? Should we put skills that we have? What would you recommend?
Yes.
No,
If
go
you're
back.
just getting going, I would start with what's on your resume. Get your picture in there, get your headline, and get your resume details. And then I often start from a place of observing other people, getting a handle on what are other people posting, how are other people using it. That'll give you confidence in seeing like, what is the sort of thing you'd post on LinkedIn versus other social media platforms? How do people respond to posts? It will prompt you with, like, if someone has a work anniversary in your network, it will prompt you to like say, congratulations to Emily for 7 years at AU. You can always edit those suggestions, but you'll start to get a sense of what are the ways people talk on this platform, and when do they tend to communicate and how. Great. So this other example, Byron is an AU alum who I met at a State Department event for people who had done State Department fellowships. And I was doing resume reviews at this, and he was in my group, and I thought, he doesn't need my help. He has a better resume than I do. He was amazing. And we have kept in touch, and there are so many things about his profile that I like that I wanted to highlight his. So again, you see that he has his own personal photo, and then you get a sense from this, like it's this almost subliminal messaging, like he cares about the rest of the world. This is his interest, his professional focus, global affairs. So we were talking a minute ago about kind of what's too long with the headlines and how many things you should mention. What I like about his is these are all really short. But he covers a lot of territory. So master relationship facilitator, skills connector, international affairs, ICAP fellow, and Coverdell fellow. So even if you don't know what those fellowships are, you get a sense this is someone who's applied for something competitive and won it. And that's something I talk a lot about with students. If it's there's some very recognizable opportunities that you don't need to describe. And sometimes it's enough to just say X scholarship or this fellowship. Again, if people have questions, they can ask you, but you don't have to explain everything in great detail. You're trying to just get them to have a sense of who you are and what you've accomplished and what you're interested in. So a couple other things about Byron. He's taken advantage of some of the other tools on here. So if you have a name, like most people don't pronounce my last name correctly. If you have a name that people often mispronounce, you can add this feature where you click on the sound and it will say it out loud. Another feature that LinkedIn has that he isn't using right now, but I just want to make sure to flag is anyone seen the frames that can go around your photo to show that you're looking for work? Okay. There are also options if you're hiring. One day you all will be hiring people yourselves. You can use those. But I like that it can feel a little bit maybe intimidating to put yourself out there and say you're open to work. There are different options where you can make it so it's just visible to recruiters or visible to anyone looking on LinkedIn. But people on LinkedIn are people who know you in a professional context. If you're in a situation where you don't know if you want to share publicly, like you already have a job and you're looking for a new one, you're always welcome to talk to us about how you might go about spreading the news that you are looking. But when you do take advantage of those frames, it gives you options to announce what type of work you're looking for, kind of how time sensitive the job search is. So these are nice tools, and they also change your visibility to recruiters in a good way. Another thing to notice about him, we talked about number of connections. Both Ashraya and Byron have more than 500 connections. So as I said, at that point, it just says 500 plus. And they automatically show up more frequently in searches and in the algorithm. And if you don't mind scrolling down a little bit, thank you. So again, he made use of these the links and the posts to show more about his work and a little bit more about it. So he's active on LinkedIn. So you'll see instances where he posts about people. He also has a strong about section like Ashraya. And he has so much to say that's current and it's project-based. When you get to his actual resume, he's pretty big, but I don't think he needs to say a ton more down here. It's clear by his titles and by a sense of kind of these short descriptions, what his work encompassed. And again, people can ask more, but I think he smartly makes use of the space above rather than trying to spell everything out in the resume portion.
And there's a question here that's a good point, because so I'm not connected to Byron. So as you can see on the top of this, it says follow versus connect. So the question is, what's the difference between following someone and connecting with them?
So I got confused about this too. And sometimes you don't see the connect, but if you click on more, it will give you the option to connect with him. And I think that it's, you can just follow people and you'll see what they say. The more meaningful interaction is to connect with them. So then it's a two-way street. Then they're aware that they're aware of what you're doing and vice versa. Yeah.
So does the connection only show up if the other person follows you back?
They have
Or
to
just-
agree to the connection.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Great. So those were two examples. And then I want to go, did you have a question? Yep.
Is the resume needed, on the LinkedIn profile? Cause I saw like some of them have the resume.
Yes. I think it's useful to have it. It doesn't mean you have to include everything that's on your resume. But I would.
Going back to like the about section.
Yes.
Is that something that should be written in the first person or third person?
Yes. I love this question because you do see it both ways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in first person, like seems a little braggy. Like, but obviously you want to. 'cause
Yes.
you want people to hire you.
I always say if you're just stating facts, you're not bragging, right? You've accomplished a lot. People should know about it. I think it's funny. I talked about this in my class, how third person can feel weird. And then I realized my bio on the syllabus was in third person. I was like, this is embarrassing. So, I think you should do what you feel most comfortable with. Of course, people can, well, I do think people should be proud and own what they do. You do sometimes see things that make you cringe a little, where you think people are overstating a bit. I think you want to be mindful about things like if you worked on a project where you were one of many people who contributed to an outcome, acknowledging that, not acting like you're doing things alone. But that's why it's nice to be able to list things like awards or articles where other people talk about you, because then you don't have to worry about that. And you can always have someone we give feedback on these profiles. Even a friend giving you feedback can help kind of gut check. Is this landing how I think it is?
Yeah.
You know?
Let me go back to the presentation.
Great. Okay. All right.
And there was a question
Yeah.
of just about profile that a student had online.
Yeah.
It said, let me move my thing so I can see it. Their headline, and this might be a little difficult without
Mhm.
seeing it, but it says computer science, game and computational media master's student at the American University.
Mhm.
And there's some capitalization throughout there. And so the question is, should I make it smaller by removing the specialization?
I don't think you need to. That doesn't sound too long to me. I think telling your major, sharing, especially for a field it's that broad, it can go in a lot of directions. I think that seems very appropriate. Yeah. So I keep plugging the headshots, but I hope you all will.
So is Monday the only day? Is there not a day? Like,
This semester, and it'll probably change. It's around her. It's a student employee. So it's based on her work schedule. Yeah. I wanted to mention a couple library resources. We're here in the library. We have a great relationship with the library, and that's in large part thanks to Emily, who used to work in the library and has maintained those relationships. So that's networking at its finest, keeping in touch. They have a number of databases that are super useful in a job search. One thing that is both time consuming but also rewarding is as you start looking at companies, there's a lot that can be found out about them. When I had my students write reflections about the job fair last week, and one of their comments was like, so many of the descriptions sound the same. It's hard to tell what companies actually do until you get in conversation with them. But there is information you can dig into online and see, like, is what they say they do match with what they actually do, getting salary data, even just getting work emails for people who you might be trying to connect to who aren't responsive on LinkedIn. So there are a lot of ways to kind of get good intel on companies you're interested in. So I've listed a few here, and then just wanted to plug that we work closely with Katie Hutt here in the library, who also meets with students one-on-one. So if you say like, I'm want to go into law and I need feedback on this particular area of law and how would I start doing research in this field, that would be something she could do for. And they have made their own webpage where they talk specifically about resources related to career research. And this is it. So, yeah, thank you, Emily. Okay, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about how do you find people. So we've talked about how you'll set up your LinkedIn page, and I think most of you probably already have one, but you might make some tweaks based on our conversation. How do you then start to find people? So I mentioned that I often connect. I have so many AU connections. That's like definitely more than half of my LinkedIn connections. And many people have, I've been here 14 years, many people have moved on, and it's interesting too to see where people go. But starting with our alumni is a great place to start. If you go to the AU page and you click on the alumni tab, you can do all kinds of searches. You could search for your major, you could search for those of you who are here in Washington semester, you could see people who are in the city or state where you are normally and start to get a sense of people in industry or discipline or region of the country that you might want to connect with. We hear all the time that alumni are the group that's most receptive to this sort of outreach and informational interviewing with students because they have good feelings about AU. They want to help other students and they're really willing to talk about their experiences and be candid with you. So that would be a place I would definitely start. I would also use, your home institutions too. And then thinking about who else to contact. So within the Career Center, most of us are all connected with each other, of course. I'm connected with my own friends, with people who are in similar groups. And as we talked about earlier, if I go to an event or meet someone, you don't have to know them well. It could just be like, I met this person and thought they were interesting. That is the basis for a connection. This is not like making a long-term commitment to someone. You're just saying like to see what you write about on LinkedIn. So feeling confident, and this is low stakes. That's the other thing I say to students. The worst that could happen is if they don't accept your connection. And I wouldn't take personally. Sometimes people aren't on it regularly and you might get an approved connection 3 months after you sent it. When to contact, my suggestion is as soon as you meet someone while it's still fresh. And again, referencing something from your meeting, like we talked about policy, or we both were wearing the same jacket, or whatever it is, helps people remember who you were. How to contact, using you can send a message before you are connected with someone. And again, my recommendation is to keep it short, make sure it's well edited. And in terms of what to propose, I wouldn't start necessarily with a big ask right off the bat. I get messages from people asking for conversations, and it's always easiest if people start small, and give evidence that they've done a little bit of work. This was the other feedback I got from my students about the fair last week, is that many of them they themselves, or they observed other students going up to an employer and saying like, what does your company do? Employers don't love this. They want to know that you've done a little bit of research, and then it's a better use of both of your time if you can say, I know that you do X. I'm interested in Y, and I'm trying to figure out how these two fit together, or just a targeted question about their work, based on this current event, how does that impact that? Or are there areas of research that you all are hoping to get into? So giving a sense that you know a little bit about their work. This is also great practice for interviews, where you'll be expected to come in with some research and to have good questions to ask in the interview. So it's fine to ask people for their time. this is always a dance where it's nice to be somewhat specific, but not overly. So if people write me and say, would you be willing to talk for a few minutes? I'm always willing to talk for a few minutes. It's easier to say yes in 15 minutes than an hour. And inevitably you'll end up talking for more than 15 minutes. But it's easier to get that sort of thing scheduled. And it's best to be open-minded about kind of how the conversation takes, whether it be Zoom or phone, telling people whichever is most convenient for you will lead to better responses as well. Are there people that you're hoping to reach out to, whether for informational interviews or in general, that you want to message? Has anyone actually messaged someone on LinkedIn that they don't know and gotten a response? My challenge is that you think of someone that you do want to message. And I think it's fun to be bold. Again, this is very low stakes. I've told this in other sessions, but during the pandemic, when we were all like pulling our hair out, I read the newspaper a lot, and I would write journalists about their work and just say like, hey, I really liked, and it was not even like hard hitting journalism. It'd be like, one journalist wrote about how he loved cooking with his girlfriend during the pandemic. I found it very moving, and the recipes were great. So I just wrote him and said, this is a genuine public service. Your writing's great. I'm interested in continuing to read your work. And he wrote me back. And I thought, this is just fun. It's reminding yourself you are a human being who has things to offer and skills. You can write people who are older than you, and you're still both people. And I think it's so fun as you get towards the end of your college time to realize the people who are currently your faculty, supervisors will soon be your peers, and thinking about what shared interests you have and how you want to engage with them. So practicing this in writing little, whether it be emails or LinkedIn messages, to remind you that you have things to share. You have people to learn from and people who can learn from you. And then I promised I'd mention a couple other LinkedIn tools that I think are useful. And then we'll have some time for other questions too. But I just did a session on LinkedIn, and they're piloting a bunch of new things that they're not even advertising yet. So you actually have to know the address to go. But we can share these too. Yeah. One is called Career Explorer. So it's a way to get data related to your field of interest. And they're starting to track a lot of things related to what we call the future of work, which I realize is a very broad topic, and something that you may think we're talking about robots or AI, but it's really just how work is changing. Some of this in light of the pandemic, how the rise of hybrid work, but getting a sense of how this is impacting the fields that interest you. Similarly, the future of skills tool, I think, is fascinating. If you put in the field that you're interested in, it allows you to see what skills are most frequently listed in job descriptions in your field and how that's changed over time. And this is something that's good for all of us to pay attention to. I say to, when I have student workers, I tell them, even if you're not looking for a job, paying attention to job descriptions in your field is really useful. When I started out in my first job, I was working in PR, and I used a fax machine to send out press releases. And in a short amount of time, that changed dramatically. I would never imagine using a fax machine again. Everything was done different. The way I pitched stories was done differently. The way I interacted with journalists was done differently. So I needed to change my skills accordingly. If you're not in that field, you might not know what skills are expected of you. And so this is a way to see what's needed in your field, and how employers are even defining it. And one thing we talk about a lot too is keywords, where many times your resume is being read by AI initially. So making sure you're matching the descriptions of what you're doing with what words they're looking for. And then finally, we looked at sort of at the bottom of the LinkedIn profiles, you can see where you can list credentials, things like certifications you have, skills assessments, even recommendations from colleagues. The feedback that we get from recruiters is that while the recommendations are nice, of course, it's never bad to have a good recommendation. They look for things like these skills assessments because it's an outside party sort of verifying, yes, you have passed whatever measure for Excel or for whatever the tool may be. And you have access to LinkedIn Learning as AU students. There are lots of resources like this free AI course or other classes that allow you to easily add credentials like that to your profile. And then I just wanted to plug some other resources that we have. There's so many online resources that you have access to as a student, things like Big Interview to practice virtual interviewing. For those of you looking to work abroad, going global is a great resource. I mentioned LinkedIn Learning, the library, and then everyone I assume has used Cantree. And Alumni Fire, you don't have to be an alum to use this. It's something that you can access now and connect with alums. It in many ways kind of mimics LinkedIn. Great, so that's the gist of what I have, but what did I not cover that you all have questions about or comments?
And quickly before we get to it,
Yes.
I just, person online shared their experience about messaging when you asked and said, I messaged a few people on LinkedIn. That's how I came to know about American University. I'm an international student from India, so LinkedIn was super helpful to me. People responded, and a few even shared their contact details for communication.
Love that. So that's great.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
How long does it take to set up a LinkedIn account? Like if you're starting with
From scratch.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot about how to segment things that sound daunting, like starting from scratch on a project like this. I would tell yourself, I'm going to spend an hour working on LinkedIn, block it out, do what you can do, stop there, and have someone give you feedback on it, your roommate, a friend. I think when we try to do things perfectly initially, it can make us not do them at all. And the examples I gave are people who've already graduated, people who have work experience. That's aspirational and you're working towards that. There are very good student profiles that don't have all those things, but that are perfectly useful and get you what you need, which is your goal is to start connecting with people who share your interests. So your goal isn't to have a perfect product today. So that's how I would start, is breaking it down into 1 hour. Are there things you all know you're going to do or change on your profile?
Yeah, I just got like a facelift.
All right. Okay.
Because I was like writing down everything and like writing it in the sections
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
And it already looks better.
I'm glad. I'm glad. I love seeing the facelifts and connect with me. I mean, please connect with me and with our career center. We post a good amount and then you'll get a sense of kind of what other events and things are going on, who we follow. I think it's just fascinating to see kind of the web of how everybody interacts.
Share. I'm gonna share
Yes.
Liz's contact in this chat. I'll bring it up on the screen for you all to find her, but we'll also send a follow-up email with the resources we chatted about today, and I'll include that as well.
Because what I love about connecting with students, then when you share some news, I'll comment and be like, I always knew you had it in you. And then other people see you have a lot of contacts at AU, you know. And that this AU background I got online. There are a lot of AU options. So anything else I didn't cover? And one thing, when you connect with me, you'll see I have things on there that seem unrelated. Like my background is in music, which has kind of nothing to do with what we're talking about today. But what I like about LinkedIn is that's a place where I can share that side of me, where I wouldn't necessarily do that on a resume for a job that has nothing to do with that. But people do connect around things like your personal interests. People will, it'll be clear what their advocacy interests are in LinkedIn. So you get a sense more of them as well-rounded people. So
Mhm.
so well, yeah, awesome.
What does the first thing mean next to your name?
Liz is a first, so this is
Oh.
in my profile, so
Yes.
she's a first connection, meaning we're connected.
Oh, yes, I didn't
So
talk about this.
yeah.
So Emily and I are connected, so we're on her page. If I was looking at the page of somebody that Emily's connected with, but I'm not, it would say second, so I'd know like, ooh, they know someone I know. And then you can find out who knows the person you want to get to know, and that can be another way. I could say like, Emily, I'm really trying to know
So if ours says
this person.
or the end.
Yeah. So you're
You know
like
someone
a
that
friend
you-
of a
a
friend.
friend of a friend, exactly.
So it can take some sleuthing, but that's a way too to make connections is to, and people have done that with me before. Like, I see you know someone at this organization. Can you like reach out to them for me?
So yeah, you can see Byron is a
Yeah.
second connection. So
Yes.
the people I'm connected to are mutual connections. So Liz, Gihan.
The one you connect with them, will it say first?
Yes.
name?
Exactly. Yep.
Good question.
Yeah. That is a good question. Great.
How
Yeah.
do you put in your resume to like autofill?
I just know you can.
Oh, I don't know if it autofills, like I put my
Yeah.
resume
Okay.
in,
Oh,
but it doesn't
okay.
like fill it out for me, like it's kind of.
Okay. I've been told you can, but I,
I've been like trying to play around with it.
Yeah.
but-
yes.
So for folks online, the question is, how do you have your resume autofill your profile?
Yes.
And we're not 100% sure, so we're gonna step by step it out at
Yes.
some point.
I just believed that it could be done.
I think it can.
So-
I've definitely seen that.
Oh, one thing I didn't mention, LinkedIn may prompt you to pay for LinkedIn Premium. I think that's almost never worth it. And I think they take advantage of students and people who are job searching to make you feel like, oh, I'll only get connected with people if I do this. And that's just not true. Like almost none of our colleagues pay for it unless AU is paying for it. It's just not, it's not worth it. You can see who looks at your page when you pay for it, and that's like kind of fun to know, but not necessary. So when in doubt about things people ask you to pay for related to your professional development, that's something you can always ask us too. But don't let them prey upon the fact that you're job searching. Great. Thank you all for coming. Come to other things we're doing. And feel free to stick around if you have other questions.
Do you know like,
Yeah.
what the next career like is?
Great question.
Yes, we have a mocktail networking reception next Wednesday from 4 to 6. Mocktails and like snacks, and it's an opportunity for you to practice networking, practice going up to people, talking to them. There are employers there, but it's more alumni and
Mhm.
talking about their career and how they got there versus do you have job openings? Let me get a job.
Is it here? Or
It
like
is
in-
here.
Mhm.
It is, well, not at the library. It's going to be in MGC, right, Graydon Center. Yes.
Mhm.
And you can find our event on Handshake.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Yeah.
Thank you.
She is a performer.
Yes. Yeah, of course.
Any personalized, we can get the person.
Yes. So, you can during an advising appointment. with us. And for Washington semester.
They have access while they're students.
You have access to advising. Yeah.
That's good, like,
Thank you, Emily.